Dive into those numbers as we always do with the poll director. And we welcome in Dr. Charles Franklin, of course, the poll director for the Marquette University Law School poll. So we mentioned the approval rating of the key players here in this budget battle. Any of these numbers thrown out of historical context by what we're seeing with this current budget impasse?
Yeah, I think that what we're seeing is maybe a little lower approval for the governor at this point in time in a budget cycle, maybe a little higher for the legislature. The governor's 2 points net positive on approval. The legislature's 5 points or so net negative. That's not unusual for the legislature to be a little bit net negative.
All right, so if we look at previous budget cycles, though, with the governor, as you mentioned, is net positive now 2 points, and we'll get to what people want about his third term in just a second here. But where does that compare to previous budget cycles that he's gone through? He's been through it 3 times before.
Yeah, he's generally been a little bit more positive in the budget years. In 2019, which was, as soon as he came into office, he was net positive by a substantial amount through the spring and into June. In 2021, it was also positive throughout. And in 23, we didn't have an early spring poll, but in our June of 23 poll, he was up, I think, a little over 55% approval. So this time he's at 48 approved, 46 disapproved. That is lower than where he had been in previous budget cycles, though still 2 points net positive.
All right, and a wide margin versus that 2023 where we saw him then, but that was really towards the end of the process there. Of course, at the end of this process, the governor has promised us, Dr. Franklin, that he's going to make his decision, or at least make his announcement on whether or not he wants to seek a third term. Did the numbers for that question today, are they a little surprising in terms of historical context with other governors?
Yeah, I think it's sort of an okay rating compared to others, but it's still negative. 42% say they'd like him to seek a third term. 55% say they would not like that. Not surprisingly, Republicans don't want him to run, but a majority of independents don't want him to run either. 83% of Democrats do, so he has strong support within the party. The comparison is with Scott Walker in January of 2016. We asked the identical question then. 36% wanted Walker to run again, 61% did not. And so Evers is doing a little bit better than that Scott Walker comparison, though in fairness, that was towards the low end of Scott Walker's job approval. After he ran for president in 2015 into early 16, his job approval numbers fell to their lowest levels of his entire tenure as governor and rose over the years coming up to the 2018 re-election year when he tried and lost.
Well, the governor today dealt a loss, if you will, from the Wisconsin Supreme Court, unanimous decision regarding the use of his partial veto powers. But that makes him 1-1 because he got the earlier win on the use of that veto power with this education funding when he extended it for 400 years. That powerful pen obviously going to come into play here whenever they wrap up these budget negotiations. What do voters think of that pen?
Yeah, a majority of voters think it's too much power for a governor to have rather than an appropriate amount of power. Our question points out that this has been a power governors have had for decades. It's nothing new. But the governors of both parties have used it to significantly change legislation. And it's in that context that a majority of people told us they thought that was too much power for a governor to have.
Is it interesting there because more Democrats, 22%, said the power of the pen is too much versus how many Republicans, just 9%, think it's appropriate. That discrepancy stood out a little bit.
Yeah, there's a little asymmetry there, with Democrats being a little more skeptical of the veto power compared to Republicans who are so strongly opposed. Now, of course, if the governor were a Republican, we might see a reversal of the party positions on this. But I do think Governor Evers' recent use of the veto, and as you say, 2 state Supreme Court cases just this spring concerning it, does show that it's a salient issue and it's one that legislators are concerned about and the public has some doubts about.
All right, one of the other big budget issues, of course, is tax cuts, always is. And we are dealing with a $4 billion plus surplus in the state. The governor, the legislature working on this. Governor says he's open to some of these tax cuts, provided that the legislature does some of the things that he wants. That's usually the give and take here. Where do voters fall on using the surplus to fund tax cuts?
Yeah, they're pretty evenly divided. We told voters that it's a $4 billion surplus. What percentage should go to tax cuts? And about 35% said that it should go to tax cuts over 50%. About an equal number, slightly less, said it should go to smaller than 50%. And a good chunk said 50% exactly. So if you look at it as 50% or more, then it's about 2/3 that want that size cut. If it's 50% or less, it's about 2/3 that want that size cut. The one thing that stands out is Republicans want bigger cuts, independents in between, Democrats favor smaller cuts.
No surprise that falls along party lines. Dr. Franklin, good to see you again. We'll look forward to doing this again.
Look forward to it. Thank you.